Her skills silenced the bullies. Forever Jamal had always been smaller than the other kids in his class. His classmates often noticed his slight frame and quiet demeanor, turning him into an easy target. Every day he braced himself for snide remarks, shoved lockers and whispers that followed him down the hallways. One Tuesday afternoon, a group of older kids cornered him near the gym. "Hey, shrimp, where's your backbone?" one sneered. Jamal tried to ignore them, but the punches to his backpack rattled his books, and his ears burned with embarrassment. At home, Jamal's younger sister, Aaliyah, watched him silently as he recounted the incident. At just 15, she was petite but disciplined, a brown belt in martial arts, trained since age 7. "You don't have to take it, Jamal," she said quietly. "Tomorrow I'm coming with you." The alarm buzzed at 6:15 a.m., but Jamal had already been awake for nearly an hour. He lay on his narrow bed staring at the faint cracks in the ceiling that looked like lightning frozen in plaster. His stomach twisted itself into tight knots every time he pictured the corridor near the gym, the place where Zane, Bilal, and their 2 shadow-like followers always waited. Yesterday's humiliation still burned behind his eyes, the way they had snatched his backpack, tossed his water bottle into the dustbin, then shoved him against the lockers while chanting that stupid nickname they had invented, Jumpy Jamal. Everyone had laughed. Even some of the boys he used to play football with had smirked and looked away. He heard Aaliyah moving in the tiny kitchen next door. The soft clink of a spoon against a steel glass, the hiss of the gas stove, the quiet murmur of her voice as she spoke to their mother. Jamal pulled the thin sheet over his head for a moment, wishing he could disappear into its folds. But then the bedroom door opened quietly, and Aaliyah's silhouette appeared against the hallway light. "Get up, little brother, we're leaving early today." Her voice was calm, almost gentle, but there was an edge beneath it that Jamal recognized. It was the same tone she used when she had decided something and arguing would be pointless. He sat up slowly. "You really think they'll listen?" Aaliyah didn't answer right away. She walked over and sat on the edge of his mattress, the old springs creaking under her weight. In the dim light, he could see the faint bruise on her left cheekbone from 2 years ago, the last time their father had come home drunk and angry. She had stepped between them, taken the slap meant for Jamal, and never once cried. That memory always made his throat tighten. "They won't listen to words," she said finally. "Not at first, but they'll understand something else." She reached into the small canvas bag she always carried to school and pulled out a pair of thin, fingerless training gloves. They were black, worn at the knuckles, the kind martial arts students used in the old community hall near the vegetable market. Jamal had seen her practicing there twice a week for almost 3 years now, ever since their cousin Tariq, who taught the classes, had offered her free lessons after seeing how fiercely she protected her younger brother. "You've been practicing those moves for ages," Jamal whispered, "but there are 5 of them. 4, actually. Harris won't be there today, his mother is sick, I heard him telling the peon yesterday." Aaliyah's lips curved in the smallest of smiles. "I pay attention, Jamal, that's half the fight." She stood up and extended her hand. "Come, eat something, you'll need energy." Breakfast was simple, 2 slices of dry bread, a boiled egg each, and weak chai sweetened with a single spoon of sugar to make it last the week. Their mother kissed Jamal's forehead before they left, her eyes worried but trusting. "Listen to your sister," she murmured. "She knows what she's doing." The walk to school took 23 minutes if they didn't stop. Today they walked faster. The January morning air was sharp, carrying the smell of wood smoke and wet cement from last night's rain. Street dogs watched them from alley mouths, tails low. A fruit vendor was already setting out his cart, stacking bright oranges in neat pyramids. Aaliyah bought 2 small ones and handed one to Jamal without a word. He peeled it slowly, the citrus scent cutting through his anxiety for a few seconds. When they reached the school gate, the usual crowd of students milled about, some laughing, some scrolling on old phones, others kicking a deflated football against the boundary wall. Aaliyah scanned the yard the way a hawk might study a field. Her shoulders were relaxed, but Jamal noticed how her fingers flexed and relaxed, as though rehearsing invisible techniques. "They usually wait near the side entrance to the gym," she said quietly. "After first period, that's where they feel safest, far from the staff room windows." Jamal nodded, throat too dry to speak. She turned to him, eyes serious. "If things go wrong, you run straight to the office. Don't wait for me. Promise." "I promise," he lied. He knew he wouldn't leave her. First period was Urdu literature. Jamal barely heard the teacher's voice. He kept glancing at the clock, watching the minute hand crawl. When the bell rang, his heart slammed against his ribs so hard he thought the boy next to him might hear it. Aaliyah was waiting outside the classroom. She had tied her dupatta tighter around her shoulders, giving her arms more freedom of movement. Together they walked down the long corridor that smelled of floor polish and teenage sweat. As they neared the gym entrance, Jamal saw them, Zayn leaning against the wall, arms crossed, Bilal beside him cracking his knuckles, the other two snickering at something on a phone. Zayn spotted Jamal first, his mouth twisted into that familiar sneer. "Look who's back, Jumpy Jamal and his babysitter." The others laughed on cue. Aaliyah didn't slow down. She stepped in front of Jamal, planting her feet in a balanced stance, left foot forward, knees slightly bent, hands loose at her sides. To anyone else she might have looked casual. To someone who knew martial arts, it was textbook readiness. "Back off," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried, clear, steady, final. Zayn pushed off the wall, laughing louder. "What's this? Big sister gonna fight for him? Cute." He took 2 steps forward, chest puffed, arms loose like he was about to shove her aside. What happened next occurred in perhaps 7 seconds. Aaliyah didn't rush, she didn't shout, she simply flowed. As Zayn reached out to grab her shoulder, she turned her body sideways, letting his hand slide past. In the same motion, her left hand rose, palm open, and redirected his wrist upward while her right foot slid forward. Zayn stumbled, off balance. Before he could recover, Aaliyah stepped in close, placed her palm against his chest, and gave a short, sharp push. Not hard enough to injure, just enough to send him staggering back into the wall with a surprised grunt. Bilal lunged next, swinging a wild right hook. Aaliyah ducked under it smoothly, rose inside his guard, and used the heel of her hand to strike the soft spot just below his elbow. His arm went numb. He yelped and clutched it. She spun behind him, caught his other wrist in a gentle lock, and guided him face first toward the ground. Slowly, controlled, letting him feel every inch of his mistake until his knees hit the tiles. The other two hesitated. One took a half step back. The other tried bravado, shouting, "You think you're tough," and charged. Aaliyah sidestepped, let his momentum carry him past, then hooked his ankle with her foot while pressing down on his shoulder. He fell forward, catching himself on his palms. Before he could rise, she placed one foot lightly on his lower back, not pressing, just enough to keep him down, and said, very quietly, "Stay there." The last boy simply froze, eyes wide, hands up in surrender. Silence fell over the corridor. A few students who had gathered at a safe distance stared, mouths open. Somewhere a teacher's voice echoed from far away, calling for order. Aaliyah stepped back, hands returning to her sides. She looked at Zayn, who was rubbing his chest and breathing hard. "Next time," she said, "leave him alone, or it won't be this gentle." She turned to Jamal. Her expression softened instantly. "Come on, we'll be late for second period." Jamal couldn't speak. He just followed her, legs shaky, mind spinning. Behind them, the bullies stayed where they were, Zayn against the wall, Bilal cradling his arm, the others still on the floor, too stunned, too embarrassed, too afraid to move. As they walked away, Aaliyah reached over and squeezed his hand once briefly. "You okay?" she asked. Jamal swallowed. "Yeah, but where did you learn all that?" She smiled, a real smile this time, small and tired and proud. "Every day since the night I decided no one would ever hurt you again." They kept walking. The bell rang again. Somewhere behind them, the bullies began to pick themselves up, quietly, without bravado, without taunts. And for the first time in months, Jamal felt the knot in his stomach loosen, just a little. The corridor seemed to shrink the moment Zane recovered his balance. His face had gone from cocky red to something darker, humiliation mixed with fury. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand as though Aaliyah's controlled push had left a stain he couldn't scrub off. Bilal was still shaking out his temporarily numb arm, muttering curses under his breath. The two others, Rizwan and Samir, had scrambled to their feet but stayed a cautious meter behind their leader. The air felt thick, electric, the way it does right before a storm breaks open. Zane rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck the way boys do when they want to look dangerous. He was taller than Aaliyah by almost a head, broader too, built from years of street cricket and aimless gym sessions with his older cousins. He stepped forward again, this time slower, more deliberate. "You think you're some kind of hero," he spat. "Touching me like that in front of everyone. You're gonna regret it, behen." Aaliyah didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. Her feet stayed rooted in the same balanced stance, weight evenly distributed, knees soft, hands open and low. To the students watching from both ends of the corridor, she looked almost serene, like someone waiting for a bus rather than facing 4 angry boys. Jamal felt his pulse hammering in his ears. He wanted to pull her back, to tell her they should just run, but his legs refused to move. Something in her stillness anchored him. Zane lunged. Not a clean punch, more of a wild shove, 2 open palms aimed at Aaliyah's chest, trying to drive her backwards into the lockers behind her. He was counting on size and surprise. She didn't meet force with force. Instead, she turned her torso 45 degrees, letting his hands glance off her shoulder. As his momentum carried him forward, she hooked her right foot behind his ankle in a smooth, almost casual motion, and pushed lightly against his upper back with the heel of her left palm. Zane's own speed betrayed him. His legs tangled, arms windmilling, and he pitched forward, shoulders slamming into the metal locker door with a loud metallic clang that echoed down the hall. A collective gasp rippled through the growing crowd of students. Bilal roared and charged next, this time swinging a proper fist aimed at Aaliyah's jaw. She ducked under the arc low, fluid, then rose inside his reach. Her left forearm met his punching arm in a sharp upward block that redirected the blow harmlessly over her head. In the same breath she stepped in, placed her right palm flat against his solar plexus, and delivered a short, stamping push. Not a strike meant to hurt, but one designed to steal breath and balance. Bilal's eyes widened as the air rushed out of him. He staggered backwards 2 steps, then 3, until his back hit the opposite wall. He slid down to a sitting position, clutching his chest and gasping like a fish on dry land. Rizwan hesitated only a heartbeat before deciding to join the fight. He went for Jamal instead, trying to grab the smaller boy by the collar and yank him sideways as leverage. "Come here, you little." Aaliyah was already moving. She intercepted Rizwan's reaching arm with a clean forearm block, turning her wrist to trap his hand against her forearm. At the same time, her right foot slid forward, sweeping his leading leg out from under him in a low arc. Rizwan yelped as the floor rushed up to meet him. He landed hard on his side, the breath knocked out of him. Before he could roll away, Aaliyah placed one foot lightly on his shoulder, not pressing down, just enough to pin him in place while she kept her eyes on the last boy. Samir had frozen mid-step. His hands were half raised, half surrendered. His mouth opened, closed, opened again, but no sound came out. The corridor was dead silent now. No one laughed. No one whispered. Even the usual background noise of slamming lockers and shouted conversations had vanished. Dozens of students lined both walls, phones in hands but screens dark. No one dared record. A few younger girls clutched each other's arms. A boy in the back row, someone Jamal recognized from maths class, had his mouth hanging open in pure awe. Aaliyah finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the way a blade carries light. "That's enough," She stepped back from Rizwan, releasing him. He didn't try to get up. He just stayed on the floor, breathing hard, staring at the ceiling tiles. Zayn pushed himself upright, using the locker for support. A thin line of blood trickled from a cut above his eyebrow where he'd caught the edge of the metal handle. He wiped it away angrily, smearing red across his knuckles. "You're dead," he rasped. "You hear me? All of you are witnesses. She attacked us. We'll tell the principal. We'll get her expelled. Her whole family will." Aaliyah tilted her head slightly, regarding him the way one might study a wounded animal. "Tell whoever you want," she said. "Tell them how 4 of you cornered a younger boy every day for months. Tell them how you threw his books, poured water on his bag, called him names until he stopped eating lunch. Tell them how you waited for him every morning like vultures. Go ahead. Tell them everything." Zayn's mouth worked silently. The bravado leaked out of him like air from a punctured tire. Aaliyah took one step closer, not threatening, just enough to make him meet her eyes. "Or," she continued softly, "you can walk away right now and never speak to my brother again. Your choice." For several long seconds no one moved. Then Zayn looked around, at the silent ring of students, at Bilal still sitting against the wall, at Rizwan still on the floor, at Samir who had backed up until his shoulders touched the opposite lockers. He looked at the blood on his hand. He looked at Aaliyah. And something in his expression cracked. He turned without another word, shoved past Samir and walked away down the corridor. His steps were stiff, shoulders hunched. Samir hesitated only a moment before following. Bilal dragged himself up, cradling his arm, and limped after them. Rizwan was the last to rise. He didn't look at anyone. He just hurried to catch up, head down. The crowd parted for them without a sound. When the 4 boys disappeared around the corner, a low murmur finally broke out. Whispers, shocked exhales, a few nervous laughs that died quickly. Aaliyah exhaled slowly, letting her shoulders drop. The controlled tension left her body like water draining from a glass. She turned to Jamal. His eyes were huge. Tears stood in them, not from fear but from something else. Relief, pride, disbelief. You didn't even look scared," he whispered. "I was," she admitted quietly. "But fear isn't the same as panic. Panic makes you sloppy. I couldn't afford to be sloppy." She reached out and brushed a piece of lint from his collar, the gesture so ordinary it felt surreal after what had just happened. "Come on," she said. "We're late for chemistry." They started walking. The crowd parted for them too, but differently, respectfully, almost reverently. A few students nodded silently as they passed. One girl, Sana, from Jamal's section, gave Aaliyah a small, hesitant thumbs up. Halfway down the corridor, Jamal stopped. "Appy," he said, voice cracking, "thank you." Aaliyah paused. For the first time since they left home that morning, her eyes softened completely. "You don't have to thank me for doing what family does," she said. Then she smiled, just a little tired but real. "But you're welcome." They kept walking. Behind them, the corridor slowly returned to life, lockers opening, conversations restarting, footsteps echoing again. But something had shifted. The story of what happened would spread through the school by lunch, exaggerated and retold 100 different ways. By the end of the day, everyone would know 2 things. Jamal was no longer alone. And Aaliyah was not someone to be tested. By the time the lunch bell rang, the story had already fractured into a dozen different versions and was racing through every classroom, every WhatsApp group, every whispered conversation in the stairwells. In the girls' common room on the first floor, a cluster of 9th graders replayed the scene they had caught only the tail end of. "She didn't even raise her voice," one girl said, eyes wide. "Just moved, like water." Another mimicked Aaliyah's sidestep with exaggerated slowness, nearly knocking over a water cooler. Laughter followed, but it was the kind of laughter that carried awe instead of mockery. Down in the boys' courtyard near the basketball hoop, the narrative shifted tones. Some of the older students, 10th and 11th graders who usually ignored the younger kids, were nodding approvingly. Zane's ego took a bigger hit than his eyebrow, one remarked, spinning a basketball on his finger. 4 against 1 girl and they still ran. Another boy, who had once been pushed around by the same group, added quietly, "About time someone stood up to them." Jamal heard none of this directly. He sat on the low concrete ledge outside the science block, knees drawn up, staring at the cracked pavement between his shoes. His sandwich lay untouched in his lap. Every few seconds someone would pass by, glance at him, and offer a small nod or a hesitant smile. No one said "Jumpy Jamal" anymore. No one even looked at him like prey. Aaliyah found him there 10 minutes into the break. She sat beside him without preamble, unwrapping her own roti roll, a Lou Anda, the same thing their mother had made for both of them that morning. She took a bite, chewed slowly, then offered him half. "Eat," she said. "You look like you're going to faint." Jamal accepted the piece but didn't bite into it yet. "Everyone's talking about you." "About us," she corrected gently. "They saw what happened. They'll remember both of us were there." He looked up at her then. Really looked. Her dupatta had slipped slightly during the scuffle, revealing the thin silver chain around her neck, the one their father had given her before he left for the Gulf 4 years ago and never came back the same. She wore it every day, a quiet reminder rather than jewelry. "Did you plan all of that?" he asked. "The moves, the timing, everything." Aaliyah shrugged one shoulder. "Not exactly. You can't plan how someone else will attack. You only plan how you'll respond. The rest is breathing and balance." Jamal let out a shaky laugh. "You make it sound so simple." "It isn't," she admitted. "My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would jump out of my chest. But Tariq Uncle always says the same thing. Fear is fuel. You either burn it or it burns you." They sat in silence for a while, watching younger kids chase each other across the courtyard. A peacock butterfly landed briefly on Jamal's sneaker, wings opening and closing like slow applause, then fluttered away. "Am I different now?" Jamal asked suddenly. Aaliyah turned to him, eyebrows raised. "Different how?" "I don't know, I feels taller. Not really taller," he added quickly, "but like, the world isn't pressing down on me so hard anymore." She smiled, a real one, soft at the corners. "That's what safety feels like. When you know someone has your back, the air gets lighter." A shadow fell across them. They both looked up. It was Ms. Rahana, the history teacher who also served as the school counselor on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She was in her late 40s, always wore muted colors, and had a habit of speaking slowly so everyone understood, even when she was angry. "Aaliyah, Jamal," she nodded to each of them, "may I speak with you both for a moment?" They followed her to the small staff room annex near the library. Inside it smelled of old books and instant coffee. Ms. Rahana closed the door behind them. "I've already spoken to the principal," she began. "He wants a formal report, of course. But before we write anything official, I want to hear your side. Not the corridor version, the real one." Aaliyah spoke first, calm and precise. She described the months of harassment, the daily taunts, the stolen belongings, the way Jamal had started coming home with red eyes and no appetite. She didn't exaggerate. She didn't need to. Ms. Rahana listened without interrupting, pen moving steadily across her notebook. When Aaliyah finished, the teacher turned to Jamal. "Is that accurate?" Jamal swallowed. "Yes, ma'am, every day." Ms. Rahana set her pen down. "And today, you defended your brother." "I defended my family," Aaliyah corrected quietly. The teacher studied her for a long moment. "You could have been seriously hurt or expelled. You know that, don't you?" "I know," Aaliyah said, "but letting it continue would have hurt him more." Ms. Rahana sighed, the sound heavy with something like respect. "The principal has decided there will be no suspension for either side. The boys will receive 2 weeks of detention and mandatory counseling sessions. You will not be punished, Aaliyah, but you are to report any further incidents immediately. Understood? Yes, ma'am. And Jamal, Ms. Rahana added, turning to him, if you ever feel unsafe again, you come straight to me. Door is always open. Promise. Jamal nodded, promise. When they left the staff room, the hallway felt different, brighter somehow, less suffocating. The rest of the day passed in fragments. In English class, the teacher asked for volunteers to read a passage from To Kill a Mockingbird. 3 hands shot up, including Jamal. He read steadily, voice stronger than it had been in months. When he finished, the teacher gave him a small, surprised smile. In the last period, physical education, the usual football game started without Zane's group. They sat on the bleachers, heads down, arms folded. No one invited them to play. No one needed to explain why. After school, Aaliyah and Jamal walked home together again. The January sun was already low, painting the narrow streets in gold and long shadows. A street vendor called out for roasted corn. The smell drifted toward them, sweet and smoky. Halfway home, Jamal stopped at the small park near their lane. It was really just a patch of grass with 2 rusty swings and a broken slide, but it had always been their place to talk when things felt heavy. He sat on one swing, Aaliyah took the other. I used to hate coming to school, he said quietly. Every morning I'd feel sick thinking about it. I know, she replied. I could see it on your face. Now I don't feel that way. He twisted the chain of the swing, letting it spin him slowly. I still feel nervous sometimes, but it's different, like I know I'm not alone. Aaliyah reached over and stopped his swing with her foot. You never were. He looked at her then, really looked, and something loosened in his chest. You're the bravest person I know, he said. She shook her head. No, bravery isn't being fearless, it's being afraid and moving anyway. You did that too, you know. You didn't run today, you stayed. Jamal blinked. He hadn't thought of it that way. They sat there until the azan for Maghrib began drifting over the rooftops. The call to prayer rose and fell, familiar and steady. As they stood to leave, Jamal reached into his pocket and pulled out the small orange he had saved from breakfast. He peeled it carefully and offered her half. Aaliyah took it. They ate in silence, the sharp citrus cutting through the evening air. When they reached their building, their mother was waiting at the door, arms crossed but eyes soft. I heard, she said simply. Aaliyah nodded. It's over now. Their mother pulled them both into a hug, tight, fierce, wordless. Jamal felt her heartbeat against his cheek, quick and strong. Inside, the flat was warm. Rice simmered on the stove. The television murmured in the background, ordinary sounds, safe sounds. That night, Jamal lay in bed staring at the same ceiling cracks that had seemed so threatening that morning. They still looked like lightning, but now they felt like something else, marks of survival maybe, proof that even broken things could hold together. Beside him in the next room, Aaliyah turned off her reading lamp. She kept her training gloves on the small shelf above her bed, within easy reach. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. Some things are understood in the quiet spaces between words. And for the first time in a long time, both siblings slept without fear pressing against their ribs. The bullies never bothered Jamal again. Not that semester. Not the next. And somewhere in the months that followed, Jamal began to stand a little straighter, speak a little louder, laugh a little easier. Not because the danger had vanished from the world, but because he had learned that courage sometimes comes in pairs. The strength of the body and the courage of the heart. And when you have both, when you carry both, you can walk through almost anything. Weeks slipped by like pages in a book no one wanted to close. February arrived with longer daylight and the faint promise of spring, even if Karachi's winter still clung stubbornly to the mornings. The school felt different now, not because the buildings had changed, but because the air had. Conversations no longer carried that undercurrent of cruelty when Jamal walked past. eyes didn't slide away. Instead, they met his with something new: curiosity, sometimes caution, often quiet approval. Jamal noticed it first in the classroom. During roll call in social studies, when Mr. Asif called Jamal Ahmed, several heads turned not to smirk, but to watch him answer "Present, sir," in a voice that no longer trembled at the edges. He sat straighter, shoulders back, spine no longer curved inward like he was trying to disappear. The desk that used to feel too big now seemed exactly the right size. One afternoon in late February, during the free period before last bell, the class monitor, quiet, bespectacled Ali, leaned over and whispered, "Hey, Jamal, you want to join the debate club? We're short on speakers for the inter-house competition next month." Jamal blinked. For years he had watched the debate team from the sidelines, envying how confidently they stood at the podium. He had never imagined anyone would ask him. "Me," he said, half expecting it to be a joke. Ali nodded seriously. "You've got a good voice when you read aloud in English. And well, everyone knows you're not scared to speak up anymore." Jamal felt heat rise in his cheeks, but it wasn't shame. It was something warmer. He glanced toward the door where Aaliyah sometimes waited. She wasn't there today, she had extra training at the community hall, but he could almost hear her voice in his head. Why not try? The worst they can say is no, and they already said yes. "Okay," Jamal said. "I'll come to the meeting tomorrow." Ali grinned. "Cool, bring your sister if you want. She'd probably destroy us all in cross-examination." Jamal laughed, actually laughed. A short, surprised sound that felt foreign and right at the same time. After school, he didn't rush home the way he used to. Instead, he lingered near the school canteen, buying a single samosa and eating it slowly while watching a group of 10th graders play a casual game of gully cricket against the back wall. One of them, a lanky boy named Farhan who lived 3 streets over, missed a catch and the ball rolled toward Jamal's feet. Farhan jogged over panting. "Sorry, bye, mind tossing it back." Jamal picked up the taped-up tennis ball and threw it, not hard but clean and accurate. Farhan caught it one-handed and gave a thumbs up. "Nice arm, you play?" "Not really," Jamal admitted. "Used to a long time ago." Farhan shrugged. "Come tomorrow after school, we need another fielder, no pressure." Jamal hesitated only a second. "Okay, I'll try." That evening he told Aaliyah everything while they helped their mother chop onions for dinner. The kitchen smelled of cumin and green chili. Aaliyah listened, knife moving steadily through the vegetables, a small smile tugging at her mouth. "You're growing," she said simply. "I'm just doing things," Jamal replied, embarrassed. "No," she corrected. "You're choosing things now, that's different." She set her knife down and turned to face him fully. "Remember what Tariq uncle says in class. Discipline isn't punishment, it's freedom. You're starting to feel that." Jamal thought about it. The next morning, instead of lying in bed dreading the day, he got up 15 minutes early. He rolled out the thin yoga mat their mother used for namaz, copied a few basic stretches he had seen Aaliyah do, then attempted 10 clumsy push-ups. His arms shook by the 5th one, but he finished. When he stood up, sweat beading on his forehead, he felt taller, not in height but in presence. He kept going. Every morning, stretches, push-ups, then 10 slow squats while breathing deeply the way Aaliyah had taught him. By the end of March he could do 25 push-ups without stopping. His shoulders rounded less. His steps landed more firmly. He still wasn't big, but he carried himself like someone who knew he could become bigger if he needed to. Aaliyah watched all of this without comment most days. She didn't praise excessively. She didn't need to. But once, when he finished a set of burpees in the small courtyard behind their flat, she tossed him a water bottle and said, "Good form. Keep your core tight next time." That was enough. At school, Aaliyah remained the quiet center of a new kind of gravity. She never spoke about the incident in the corridor. When someone asked, usually a younger girl with wide eyes, she would only say, "It was necessary," and change the subject. but the respect followed her like a shadow she didn't ask for. The martial arts club had never been popular before. After the incident, though, the old community hall near the market saw more students showing up on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tariq's uncle had to borrow extra mats. A few girls who had never spoken to Aaliyah before started sitting near her during breaks, asking shy questions about stances and breathing. She answered patiently, demonstrating moves with the same calm precision she had used that day. One afternoon, a 12th grader, tall, serious Zoya, captain of the girls' basketball team, approached Aaliyah outside the hall. "I saw what you did," Zoya said without preamble. "Not many people could stay that composed. If you ever want to train with us, self-defense sessions for the girls' team, I'd like to invite you." Aaliyah considered it. "I'm not a teacher." "You don't have to be," Zoya replied. "Just show up. Let them see someone who doesn't back down." Aaliyah glanced at Jamal, who was waiting a few meters away, school bag slung over one shoulder. He gave her a small nod. "I'll think about it," she said. She did more than think. The following week she started attending the sessions, not as an instructor but as a regular participant who quietly corrected form when someone asked. Word spread. More girls came. Some boys too, though they kept a respectful distance. Jamal watched his sister become something he hadn't expected. Not a celebrity, but a standard. Not someone people feared, but someone people measured themselves against. If Aaliyah can stay calm, maybe I can too. One Friday in early April, the school held its annual sports day. Jamal had never participated before, always found excuses, always felt too small, too slow. This year he signed up for the 400-meter relay. He wasn't the fastest on the team. Farhan ran the anchor leg and was lightning. But when Jamal took the baton in third position, legs burning, lungs on fire, he didn't drop it. He didn't slow down. He pushed through the curve and handed off cleanly. Their house, Azed, won silver. When the medal was hung around his neck, the crowd cheered louder for him than for anyone else. Aaliyah stood at the edge of the field, arms folded, smiling in that small, private way only he could read. After the ceremony, as students milled about collecting certificates and water bottles, Zayn passed by. He was thinner now, quieter. Detention and counseling had stripped away much of the bravado. He didn't look at Jamal with anger anymore, just a quick, awkward glance, then away. Jamal met his eyes for a second. No words, no challenge, just acknowledgement that the old script had ended. Zayn kept walking. That evening, back in their flat, Jamal and Aaliyah sat on the roof under a sky turning from orange to deep indigo. The city hummed below them, traffic, azan calls overlapping, children shouting in the alley. "I used to think being small meant being weak," Jamal said quietly. Aaliyah leaned back on her hands. "Size never decided anything, heart does, and yours got bigger." He laughed softly. "Yours was always huge." She shrugged. "We both grew, just in different directions." They sat in comfortable silence. Somewhere nearby, a kite string snapped in the wind, sending bright paper tumbling like a falling star. Jamal spoke again, voice thoughtful. "You know what I realized? Bravery isn't about never being afraid. It's about deciding the people you love are worth the fear." Aaliyah looked at him, really looked, and her eyes softened in a way few people ever saw. "Exactly," she whispered. They stayed on the roof until the first stars appeared, faint against the city glow. Below them life continued, messy, loud, ordinary. But up here, in the quiet between siblings, something unbreakable had taken root. Respect couldn't be bullied away. It could only be earned. And once earned, it stayed.